Today we're going to look at two different types of quadrilaterals. Quad is going to mean four, so these are four-sided shapes. And we're going to look at squares and rectangles. Squares are quadrilaterals where all four sides are equal. So if we represent the side of our square with the variable x, then all four sides of our square will have a length of x. And some formulas we're going to need to be able to work with squares. If we're trying to find the perimeter of a square, it's just all four sides added together. So it's going to be 4 times whatever length the side is. If we want to find the area of any shape like this will be length times width. And our length and width are both the same. So it's x times x. And another way that we can write that is to write x squared, or x to the second power. That way, if we have the area and we need to work backwards to find out what the side is, the opposite of squaring would be square root, and we could do that. The third equation we need to be able to work with a square is to be able to find our diagonal, the distance across from corner to corner. And the formula for finding diagonal of a square is to take your side, in this case represented by the letter x, and multiplying by the square root of 2. And that has to do with laws of triangles, but that's going to be how you find the diagonal of a square. The formulas for a rectangle are pretty similar. Instead of having all four sides equal, though, we have two different lengths. So we could say that both sides are going to be x, but then our bases are going to be y. So if we need to find the perimeter, a quick way of doing that would just be to add together one of each length and double it. So we'll have 2 times x plus y, because we have 2 x's and we have 2 y's. So whenever you add one of each together and multiply by 2, we get all of the sides added together. If you want to find area of a rectangle, it's just as simple as x times y, the length times the width. Okay. If we needed to find the distance across the middle here, our diagonal across a rectangle, we would have to use Pythagorean's theorem, which tells us that if we say that this here is z, we would find z by saying that x squared plus y squared is equal to z squared. And there'll be another video on Pythagorean theorem if you'd like to learn some more about that. Okay, so let's start looking at some problems. All these problems came from the last 2 years of tests, so from the 12-13 and 13-14 school years. Question number 1, what is the perimeter of a square with sides that measure 151 thousandths inches? So first we have to figure out what that is a number, 0.151. And since we want to find the perimeter means we're going to take the side of our square and multiply it by 4. And remember, in the HP calculator, we have to use the enter button. So we would type in 0.151 enter for divide. You type the function after the number. So whenever you do that, we should get an answer of 6.04 times 10 to the negative first. And if we're going to write that in standard notation, that -1 here at the end means that we're going to move our decimal back one place. So you could also write 0.604. Both of those are correct answers. Okay. Question 2, what is the area? So we want to find the area of a square with a side length of 221 feet. So the way we find area is we take the side and we square it. So our side is 221. In the HP calculator, you would hit the blue shift button and then x squared. It's on the square root key. And that then gives us an answer of 4.88 times 10 to the 4th power, which if we move our decimal over to the right 4 times, we could also write 48800, 48,800. Okay. Question 3. What is the area of a square with a side that measures 257 meters? So again, we have the side dimension given to us. We want to find the area, so all we do is we square that number. So in your calculator, you'd type in 257, blue shift x squared, And we get an answer then of 6.60 times 10 to the fourth. Which again, if we move our decimal over to the right 4 places, we get 66000. Both of those are on the answer key. Okay, what is the diagonal of a square with a side that measures 0.002 centimeters? So we want to find the diagonal, the distance across the center here, which is our side times the square root of 2. So we have our side, 0.002, enter, and then we want to multiply it by the square root of 2. So first we have to find out what the square root of 2 is. So we would type 2, hit the square root key, and it should show that it's 1.41. And then we want to multiply that by what we pushed before. So then we hit the times key. And we get an answer of 2.83 times 10 to the negative third. Now with an exponent of -3, that means we're going to move our decimal back to the left 3 places if we're going to write it in standard notation. So whenever we move that back 3 times, you end up with 2 zeros and then your 283. So this could be correct, or this. And you do want to watch out for your units, and all of these so far, the units that they talk about in the problem have been the units that are in the answer blank. This was centimeters over here, and this was centimeters on our answer blank. Sometimes, though, they do use different units, and you'll have to do a conversion. So just be sure you keep an eye out for that. Speaking of, on this one, we have area given to us in square feet, 128,000 square feet, and we want to find the length of the diagonal in inches. So we have the area already given to us. This is our area. That is the side squared, 128,000. In order to find the diagonal, we have to know what the side is. So the way that we undo this square up here is that we're going to do a square root. So we're going to square root each side here. So our side is whatever the square root of 128,000 is. So in your calculator, you just do 128,000, hit the square root key, and that's the side of your square. And the way you find the diagonal of your square is to take that and multiply it by the square root of 2. So you have your answer to that part in your calculator. We just need to figure out what the square root of 2 is. So hit 2 square root of x, and you get your 1.41 that comes up. And then, since we want to find the product of those two, then you hit the times button. And that will give us our diagonal in feet. But we want to find out what the diagonal is in inches. So think about what we need to multiply by to go from feet to inches. And we're going to be multiplying by 12. So we would just hit 12 times. And we get a final answer then of 6.07 times 10 to the third, which is 6070. And the way that I wrote this out is a little bit weird looking because that's how we're typing it into the HP calculator. If you want to have written down in a more normal or format that you're more used to, you would have the square root of 128,000 times the square root of 2, and then we'd need to multiply it by 12. This is what we're doing. The other is just how you type it in the calculator. Okay, number 6. The area of a square is 5,995 square meters. What is the perimeter of the square? So in order for us to find out the perimeter, we have to find the side. So we know our area, side squared, is 5,995. So remember, to undo the square, we have to square root. So our side is 5,995 square rooted. And then we need to multiply that side times 4 to find our perimeter. And we get an answer of 3.10 times 10 to the second. If you move the decimal over twice, you get 310. The perimeter of a square is 324 millimeters. What is the area of the square? So the perimeter is the distance all the way around, which is 4 times whatever length the side is. And that's equal to 324. And algebraically, in order to undo multiplying by 4, we have to divide by 4. So our side is just 324 divided by 4. And Once you get the side in your calculator, then we need to find the area. The area is just your side squared. So whatever you get for that answer, you just want to square it. And now that's our area that we have. And you're going to have 6.56 times 10 to the third, or 6560. And the way you type that in your calculator, if you're still not sure, you do 324, enter, 4 divide, and that gets us the side of the square. And then we need to square it, so we're going to hit the blue shift key, x squared, which is on the square root button. And if you type it just like that, then you should get this for our answer. Okay, let's move on to the second page. If the length of the side of a square is doubled, what is the ratio of the area of the original square to the area of the new square? So anytime we talk about ratio, we're finding something over something else. We're dividing. Whatever is mentioned first divided by whatever is mentioned second. So we want to find the ratio of the area of the original, so our first area, to the area of the new square. So the area once we have doubled it. So let's draw two squares. We got square 1 and square 2. If the length of the side of a square is doubled, it doesn't matter what the value is, you can make it whatever you want to be, so I'm going to make this side be 1. If the length is doubled, that means our new square, the side is 2. What is the ratio of the area? So in our original square, if this is 1, this is 1, 1 times 1 is 1. So the area of our original square is 1. In our new square, whenever we doubled the side, 2 times 2 gives us 4. So what we're going to type into our calculator is 1, enter, 4, divide. It's also good just to know that 1/4 is 0.25. But if you type it in like that, your calculator will say 2.50 times 10 to the negative first. But that negative 1, you move your decimal back one place, and you get 0.250. 25 1/4. Okay. The next one, we want to find a ratio also. We want to find the ratio of the area of the original square to the area of the new square, just like we did on the other one. Only this time it's the diagonal of the square that's being doubled. So if you have your original square, your diagonal could be 1. And in your new square, the new diagonal is 2. We found the diagonal by multiplying the side by the square root of 2. So if we're trying to find out what the side is from the diagonal, we have to do the opposite and divide by the square root of 2. So our side is actually 1 over the square root of 2. And the side in our second square will be 2 over the square root of 2, or the square root of 2. Now to find the area, we have to square that. So 1 over the square root of 2 squared, which is just 1 over 2. Because remember, square and square root are opposites. So if we're squaring the square root of 2, it's just 2. It's just like 7 times 3 divided by 3. It's just 7. Okay? In our new square, we have 2 over the square root of 2. And if we square that, 2 squared is 4. And then the square root of 2 squared is 2. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So our original area is 1/2. Our new area is 2. So 1/2 divided by 2 is equal to what? What is that ratio? And we get the same value that we got on the previous one. That relationship between a linear dimension, a line on your square, and the area is going to be basically square of whatever you're doing. So if we double it, you're actually multiplying by 4, because 2 squared is 4. Okay, number 10. We have a diagonal. We want to find out the side. Remember, diagonal is the side times the square root of 2. So we already know the diagonal. We have to then divide by the square root of 2 to find out what x is. So you have 0.00125, enter, 2 square rooted, divide, And our side length we get is 8.84 times 10 to the negative fourth, which you could also put 0.000884. Same type of problem here, only we have to take it one step further. We have a diagonal, and we want to find the area. So we use our diagonal, we divide it by the square root of 2 to get our side. And once we have that side length, in order for us to find the area, we have to square it. So you would hit blue shift x squared, and you end up with 1.21 times 10 to the fifth power, or 121,000. And just to kind of clear this up, if you're not sure what we were doing on that one again, whenever you take your diagonal, that's equal to the side times the square root of 2. So in order to find just the side, we have to do the opposite of multiplying. We have to take our diagonal and divide it by the square root of 2. And that's the side length of our square here. And to find the area, we have to do side times side, or side squared. So we're going to take that quantity we get and square it. And that's the math that's going to give us our answer. Okay. Question 12. We have an area given to us and we want to find the diagonal. So kind of the opposite of this one. Our area is equal to the side squared. So remember, to undo a square, we have to take the square root. So we've got 0.00595 square rooted. That is the side length of our square. And remember, to find the diagonal, we multiply our side times the square root of 2. And we get an answer of 1.09 times 10 to the negative first, which if we move our decimal back to one place, gives us 0.109. Number 13, we're moving on to rectangles. We have a perimeter. We have the distance all the way around, and we want to find out what that missing side is. So remember, perimeter is equal to 2 times the sum of your two lengths. So the first thing we need to do is we need to move the 2 to the other side. So instead of multiplying by 2, we have to do the opposite, and we're going to divide by 2. And that will give us the sum of our two lengths. So if we subtract the length that we do know, that's going to leave us with the length that we don't. So 5.526 enter, 2 divide, 0.875 minus, and that leaves us with a side length of 1.89. It'll say times 10 to the 0 also is one of the options on the answer key, but remember, we don't write times 10 to the 0. That's meaning we're moving it 0 times, and why take the time to write it down? Is 1.89. And the picture should be drawn somewhat to scale. So if you look at your answer, 1.89, and look at the length of the other one, 0.875, those numbers seem to kind of make sense. If you got a huge number like 189,000, then you would know that you pushed a button wrong because it doesn't really match the picture that you have. Okay, number 14. What is the area of a rectangle with a length of 4.21 centimeters and a width of 1.89 centimeters? You can draw on the test if you need to. So you could always draw this and say, okay, this is 4.21, this is 1.89, and remember, to find the area, you're going to multiply your two sides. So we're going to have 4.21 times 1.89. And remember, when you have things in parentheses next to each other and there's no math symbol in between it, that means you're multiplying the two things. If it helps you to put a dot in between to help you remember to multiply, you can. But you should end up with 7.96. Okay, number 15. A rectangle has an area of 231.57 square inches. The width is 5.821 inches. What is the length in inches? So we have a rectangle where we know the total area. We know what x times y is. X times y is 231. Oh, x times y is 231.57. And we know the width. We know that this is 5.821. So the only thing we don't know is that distance. So we're going to go ahead and plug in 5.821 here. And in order to undo that multiplication, remember we have to divide. That's the opposite. So x is equal to our area divided by our width. And that gives us our length of 3.98 times 10 to the first. Or you look at it, you move your decimal over 1, 39.8. Okay. Let's move on to page 3. What is the perimeter of a rectangle with a length of 2.28 feet and a width that is half the length? So we know that our length is 2.28, and we want to find the width, and it says the width is half of the length. So we're going to have to divide our 2.28 by 2 to find our other dimension. And whenever you divide 2.28 by 2, we're left with 1.14. So that's going to be our other length here. And we want to find the perimeter. So we're going to add the two sides together and then multiply by 2. And we end up with an answer of 6.84. And again, just as you're working, make sure you're checking to make sure feet, your units match. Okay, 17, we have a perimeter. We want to find our missing side. So this is equal to 2 times the sum of our two lengths. So we have to divide by 2 instead of multiplying by 2. So we've got our 2574.185 over 2. And that's equal to our two sides added together. And we know one of those sides, so we can just subtract that. And the value we'll be left with is our missing side, which is 5.15 times 10 to the second power, which we move our decimal over twice is 515. Okay, number 18. We have an area. We want to find our missing side. Remember, area is just our length times our width. We know one of those, so we just take our area and divide it by the side that we know. And that will leave us with our missing side, which is 2.90 times 10 to the negative third, or 0.00290. Okay, number 19. We have a perimeter. We want to find the area. So we have to find out what the missing side is and then find the area. So we're going to approach this in the same way. We're trying to find out what our missing side here is. So perimeter is 2 times the sum of our lengths. So we'll do 5.75 divided by 2, and then subtract the side that we know. And then that's going to give us our missing side here, which is 2.16. But you don't want to just write it down and clear your calculator. You want to leave that value showing in your calculator because we're going to use it. The area is just our length times our width. We already have one of our sides showing in our calculator. We just need to multiply it by 0.72. So whatever you have there and showing in your calculator, in this case 2.16, just type in 0.72 times, and that will give us 1.55. Okay, number 20, we have the area and we want to find our length. So this one's pretty simple. It's just our base times height, or length times width. We have our number 27.9 that we already know, and whenever you do that division, we end up with our other side 3.47 times 10 to the first, which is the same as 34.7. Okay. Number 21. We have area, we want perimeter. So it's kind of the opposite of the one we had here. Our area is equal to our length times our width, which is 3x and 7x. We have a variable in two different places. So our area is 3x times 7x. So let's go ahead and do that math. Our area, 0.102, is equal to 3 times 7, which is 21, and then x times x, which is x squared. So if we want to find out what x is, we have to first divide by this 21 that's in front, because remember, you're multiplying there, and we want to do the opposite. So we have to take our area, divide it by the 21, and that's equal to x squared. But we just want to know x, so that means we have to take the square root. So x is the square root of 0.102 over 21, which in your calculator should be showing 6.97 times 10 to the negative second. But they don't just want us to find x. Now we have to find out what the perimeter is. So you could plug that in. You could multiply by 7. You could multiply by 3 and then use your formula for perimeter. But there's a faster way of doing that. Perimeter is 2 times the sum of the sides. Our sides are 3x and 7x. And we're going to multiply by 2. So 3x plus 7x is the same as 10x. And 2 times 10 gives us 20x. So our perimeter is actually equal to whatever the value for x is that we found, the 6.97 times 10 to the negative second, times 20. So you should still have this showing in your calculator. So you just hit 20 times, and that will give us a perimeter of 1.39. A little bit trickier because we had the variable in 2 places, but once you've worked it a few times, it'll come to you a little bit quicker. Okay, number 22, we have an area. We want to find the perimeter. So we take our area, which is the product of our 2 sides, and we'll go ahead and divide it by the side that we know. And that's going to give us our missing side, which is going to be 211, 2.11 times 10 to the second, or 211. And it's not exactly, if you hit orange show, it will tell you there's more numbers involved there. But that's just an approximate value. We don't clear it out though. We know that perimeter is 2 times the sum of our 2 sides. So you have one of the sides showing in your calculator. You have your 211. So then you just type in 121.8 plus. That will give you then the sum of them. And then we want twice that, so then you hit 2 times. And that will give you then our final answer, which is 6.67 times 10 to the second. If we move it over twice, 667. So to rewrite it in a way that's not how you type it in the calculator, once you do this step and you find 211, then you have that 211 plus 121.8, and then all of that needs to be multiplied by 2. And that's what this math down here is. Okay. Let's go on to the last couple on the last page. We've got number 23. The rectangular playground at school is 3 times as long as it is wide. So if we say the width is x, then it's 3 times as long, so it's going to be 3x. The area is 272 square meters, and we want to find out what is the perimeter. So area is going to be your length times your width. So our area is 272, and it's equal to x times 3x. So let's go ahead. X times x is x squared. So 272 is equal to 3x squared. Both of those equations are the same. Now, in order for us to find x, first we have to get rid of the 3 that's in front here. So the math that's going on between those guys is multiplication. We have to do the opposite, and we have to divide. Because whenever you divide by 3 on both sides, it's going to reduce out that 3. So you have 272 divided by 3 is equal to x squared. But we don't want to know x squared. We want to just know x. So the way that you undo a square is you take the square root. So then x is 272 divided by 3, square rooted. So when you type this in, that will give us our width right here. Now we want to find perimeter. Remember, perimeter is 2 times the sum of your lengths, or your length and your width. So if we have x and 3x multiplied by 2, x plus 3x, we have 1x and 3x, that's going to be 4x. Then we have 2 times 4, which is 8x. the perimeter of this rectangle will be whatever we got for x right here times 8. So ultimately what you're typing into your calculator is that. And you end up then with a perimeter of 76.2 meters. In your calculator, it'll show 7.62 times 10 to the first. Okay, last one here, and these are a little bit more difficult. They're found a little bit further on in the test. The ratio of the length to the width of a rectangle is 7 to 5. That's how you read that with the symbol in the middle there. And what that is telling us, the ratio of the length to the width is 7 to 5. That means that whatever value each of those is, the relationship between it is 7 to 5. So we'll say this is 7x and this is 5x. And they tell us the perimeter is 222, and we want to find the area. So it's kind of the opposite of the last problem. So perimeter is 2 times the sum of your sides. So our perimeter is 2 times 5x plus 7x. So 5x and 7x gives us a total of 12x. So our perimeter is 2 times 12, which is 24x. And our perimeter is 222, they tell us. So we're trying to solve this equation. So 24 times something is 222. So in order for us to do the opposite of this multiplication, remember we have to divide. So you have 222 divided by 24, and that gives you the value for x, which then we could multiply by 5 to get the width, or we could multiply by 7 to get the length. But they don't ask for those, they ask for the area. So area is length times width. So if we plug in what we found, our 5x and our 7x, then that breaks down to 5 times 7, which is 35, and then x times x, which is x to the second power. And we know what x is. We just found out by dividing our perimeter by 24. So to find the area, you would do 35 times your value that you got whenever you divided those two quantities. And that will give us our final answer for the area, which is going to be 2.99 times 10 to the third power, which would also be 2990. Okay, I know that was quite a bit of information, and hopefully you went through that in several different segments, but that is what you will see about squares on the middle school TMSCA calculator tests. You will also see problems where squares are combined with other shapes. You might have portions taken out of it or other shapes added onto it, but those are how most often you will see squares and rectangles on that exam.